Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's do this. This time it is Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic, their Grand Slam race without Rafael Nadal playing tennis. Now, of course, the rules are absolutely the same as usual. We just have to pretend that Rafael Nadal forfeited every single one of his first round matchups, but somehow kept the exact same ranking. Now, as you can see, I'm starting from 2005 when it comes to Roger Federer because his first encounter at a Grand Slam tournament was at the 2005 French Open versus Rafael Nadal, and of course 2006 for Novak, which is really way back, but he did play Rafa at the 2006 edition of French Open. Now, when it comes to my predictions, I actually have both of them winning 25 plus majors because both of them were severely impacted by Rafael Nadal. Different timings, different tournaments, but I clearly see both of them being 25 plus when it comes to majors, and it will be awfully close. I think around 26, 27. I don't know who's going to win this race. I am recording as I'm making this video, so this is going to be crazy even for me. So let's get right into this. The first tournament here is the 2005 Australian Open. It was Leighton Hewitt, the Aussie, defeating Rafael Nadal in the fourth round, 3-2. The same Leighton Hewitt actually made it all the way into the finals where he lost to Marat Safin, the same Marat Safin who defeated Roger Federer in the semifinals. Therefore, everything stays absolutely the same, and this was, by the way, the first time Roger Federer lost at a Grand Slam outside of the French Open since the 2003 US Open, as you can see on your screens. Nevertheless, let's go to the 2005 edition of the French Open, the first Federer match at a Grand Slam, and it was Rafael Nadal winning 3-1. Now, there is no Rafael Nadal, so it's either David Ferrer or Sebastian Grosjean against Roger in the semis, and then it's Mariano Puerta, who never played another third round on a major before or after the 2005 French Open, and who, by the way, played two straight five-setters in the semifinals and quarterfinals. So yeah, Roger Federer is winning his first ever French Open at the 2005 edition. Nevertheless, let's go to the Wimbledon. It was Nadal losing to Gilles Miller, this time in the second round, and I'm saying this time because they met 10 years later. Amazing, and they had that epic fourth round matchup which ended 15-13, if I recall it correctly, in favor of Gilles Miller in the fifth set, of course. Nevertheless, everything stays the same. It's Federer and Roddick, and it's still Federer, so it's major number 6. And now the US Open, again, it was James Blake defeating Rafael Nadal 3-1 in the third round. So everything stays the same. It's Agassi and Federer is still winning. And this is really easy for Roger. This is 7 majors. So I think we should add a little bit of Novak Djokovic in the mix. But it didn't start off well for Novak. He lost immediately at the 2006 Australian Open in the first round. Paul Goldstein 3-1. By the same score, Roger Federer beat Marcos Baghdatis in the finals to regain his crown and win his, in this scenario, 8th major. Really easy for Roger. Now, French Open 2006. First controversy in this video. So, it was Nadal defeating Novak in the quarterfinals. 6-4, 6-4, and then Novak forfeited. Novak used to have a lot of problems when it comes to smaller injuries and durability on majors from 2006 to, let's say, 2010. He used to forfeit a lot, but if there is no Nadal, would that mean that he would play Leighton Hewitt? And I just think that this would be an epic match, and this would be the first ever signature moment, signature match of Novak Djokovic's career, signature win. I think he would defeat Leighton Hewitt, let's say, by the score of 3-1 or 3-2. But he's really tired in the semis, and he's playing Ivan Ljubicic, who's having a career season, and Ivan Ljubicic easily beats him. Novak might even forfeit that match. So Ivan Ljubicic is in the finals against Roger Federer. Student and teacher meet in the finals. What a final. And I was thinking about this long and hard. So I looked up the head-to-head matchups. 13-3 for Roger. But they played on clay only once, back in 2001, and it was 6-2, 6-1 for Ivan Ljubicic. And I just think, when I think of Novak Djokovic 2015, 2016, Novak held all 4 majors. And then when you think that it's so easy, and when you think it's automatic Novak Djokovic lost the same query at the 2016 Wimbledon. So I think a similar thing might occur in this scenario because, as you can see, Roger held all four majors here. And of course, Roger was never a elite clay player. And I just don't see Roger winning back-to-back French Opens, just as I couldn't see Nadal winning back-to-back Wimbledons from 2006 to 2008. Therefore, I have Ivan Ljubicic defeating Roger Federer in that final. So here's an F Roger, and here's a semi-final for Novak. Now, of course, a super motivated Roger Federer walks on to the Wimbledon, and of course he will become the fourth time in a row champion, defeating Jarkko Nieminen or Marcos Baghdatis in the finals instead of Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic lost to Mario Ancic in the fourth round. Therefore, here's a dub Roger, here's a fourth round Novak, 9-0. And then, of course, Leighton Hewitt actually gets his revenge on Novak in real life, and in this case, he beats him in the third round 3-0 of the 2006 US Open, and it's still Roger Federer defeating Andy Roddick 3-1. So actually, Roger Federer wins his 10th major at the 2006 US Open. So it was Roger Novak Part 1 at the Grand Slams at the 2007 Australian Open. Fourth round, it was an easy victory for Roger Federer, 3-0. Therefore, everything stays the same when it comes to Novak. Roger was waiting for Fernando Gonzalez in the 2007 Australian Open final. The same Gonzalez who defeated Rafael Nadal in the quarterfinals. Now, if there is no Rafael Nadal, there is a long shot that Andy Murray perhaps even reaches the final. So there's a long shot that Andy Murray loses another Australian Open final, this time to Roger Federer. But yeah, everything stays the same. Here's a dub, here's a fourth round, 11-0. Now let's go to the French Open. Roger is trying to regain his crown. So it was Novak and Rafa in the semis. And if there is no Rafa, that means that it's Carlos Moya or Leighton Hewitt. Now listen, Carlos Moya is a tough out for anybody, but I have Novak Djokovic actually reaching his first ever Grand Slam final and losing to Roger Federer, let's say 3-0 for the sake of this video, but plenty of experience when it comes to Novak Djokovic and his future winnings on Grand Slams. Now let's go to the Wimbledon. It was Baghdatis and Djokovic playing a epic five-setter in the quarterfinals, and then Novak played good against Nadal for a set and then imploded and forfeited the match in the third set, with the score being 1-1. Now, there's a possibility of Tomasz Berdych or Michal Jóźny playing against Novak in that semi-final instead of course, Rafael Nadal. It doesn't really matter. Novak was completely done after the Baghdatis match. Unfortunate weather during that match. I think that match was like 3 or 4 days long. I'm not even sure. I was really young during that match. I just remember it. It was so long, couple of days, but it doesn't really matter. Novak would pretty much lose against anybody in the semifinal. He was absolutely wasted, and it's still Roger Federer winning the tournament. Of course, easier matchup for Roger without a Rafa. Now, let's go to the 2007 US Open. So first of all, let's just mention Rafa, who lost in the fourth round against David Ferrer. And if you remember this match, this was the first Grand Slam final for Novak Djokovic in real life. And the match was actually closer than you think. Novak missed a bunch of break points, a bunch of set points. He had his chances. He was just too nervous, in my opinion, and not clutch, which is weird. But in this scenario, as you can see, Roger Federer is back-to-back Grand Slam champion, and he has won 3 out of 3 majors and 27 out of 27 matches when it comes to 2007. He's 1 match away from completing all 4 majors in a single season for the first time ever in his career. But Novak has a final, and he has some experience. And I think because it was so close in all 3 of those sets, I think that Novak pulls it out. I think in this crazy scenario, there is too much pressure on Roger Federer. And I think Novak is just this young, new guy who's hungry, who's reached 2 semifinals, 1 final. And I think that Novak Djokovic actually defeats Roger Federer in this scenario when it comes to the 2007 US Open. So there is now a change here. 13-1 going into the 2008 Australian Open. So at the 2008 Australian Open, it's Roger and Novak again. There is some beef, there is some animosity building up between them because, of course, the US Open, the real life 2007 Canadian Open final. And by the way, if you need some evidence that Novak could beat Roger back in 2007, watch the 2007 Canadian Open or Canadian Masters final. Nevertheless, it was again Roger and Novak, and I have still Novak Djokovic defeating Roger Federer. Maybe a bit tighter match, maybe 3-1 or maybe even 3-2, but I still give it to Novak, and he still beat Tsonga, who beat Rafael Nadal in the other semifinal. So everything stays the same, 13-2. Now, French Open 2008. This was hard for me because I wanted to give it to somebody else because I don't think that Roger would deserve it. I don't think that Novak would deserve it because Roger won 4 games in the final against Rafa, but then Novak, I mean, I just don't see Novak being a back-to-back Grand Slam champion back in 2007 and 2008, but then there is nobody else. Nicolas Almagro, really? So, I mean, I kind of looked up some head-to-head matchups back then on clay between Novak and Roger. There is not a conclusive evidence. 2008 Monaco was Novak forfeiting. 2009 Rome was Novak beating Roger. 2006 Monaco was Roger beating Novak. So, yeah, it was really hard, but I think Novak had a slightly better tournament when it comes to 2008 French Open, so I just gave it to him. I think it would be a really weird outcome, really weird tournament, but I have Novak Djokovic winning the 2008 French Open, and this makes sense because at the Wimbledon, he lost in the second round to Marat Safin. So a guy who wasn't supposed to really win 3 straight majors finally lost in the second round, but there is no epic match between Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal in the finals. There is Michal Yuzhny or maybe even Andy Murray or maybe Rainer Schüttler in the final against Roger Federer. Therefore, Roger Federer is a back-to-back Grand Slam champion at the Wimbledon. So yeah, this is really easy, 14-3. Now, US Open, this time in real life, Federer beat Novak in the semis. I think that stays the same. Federer is super motivated to beat Novak Djokovic at a Grand Slam, and it was Andy Murray defeating Rafael Nadal in the semis, and it's still Murray and Federer, and it's still Federer, this time regaining his crown. So it's 15-3 going into 2009. At the 2009 Australian Open, it was the defending champion Novak Djokovic forfeiting in the quarterfinals to Andy Roddick after being down 2-1. It was Roger and Rafa playing an epic final. Rafa won his only Australian Open at the 2009 edition, but if there is no Rafa who is in that final versus Roger, it's probably Fernando Verdasco, who is having a epic tournament. And I think it would be challenging for Roger to defeat a really, really good Fernando Verdasco, but I still think he pulls it out because of his experience. It's maybe 3-1, maybe 3-2 epic match. I think that would be a really, really, really good match, but I still have Roger Federer winning 16 majors overall. And then the French Open, everybody knows what happened. Rafael Nadal lost to Robin Soderling 3-1 in the 4th round. Novak was out before that in the 3rd round. Philip Kohlschreiber 6-4, 6-4, 6-4. And yeah, Roger Federer defeated Robin Soderling to claim his in real life first in this scenario, 3rd Roland Garros. So yeah, 17-3. Wimbledon 2009, there is no Rafael Nadal. No need to rewrite the history books. Everything stays the same. Tommy Haas defeats Novak Djokovic in the quarterfinals, and Roger Federer defeats Andy Roddick in the final, 16-14. In the 5th set, it was epic, 18th major, 7 straight Wimbledon, and now the US Open. So in real life, it was Del Potro and Nadal in the semifinals, 6-2, 6-2, 6-2, Juan Martin Del Potro. It would have been probably Fernando Gonzalez and Juan Martin Del Potro in the semifinal. Imagine that forehand matchup. What a match that would be. But on the other side, it was Novak and Roger in another semifinal. and I still have Roger Federer defeating Novak Djokovic and playing Juan Martin Del Potro in the final. Now, I changed the outcome of this final in the without Novak Djokovic video, and I'm changing it again, this time in the favor of Roger Federer, simply because he has been there. 2007, same scenario, 27 straight major wins in the final against a young upcoming guy. And I think Roger has more experience. This match was really tight, 2 tie breaks. Roger wins one of them, he's the champion. And I think because of the experience, because of motivation to finally complete the in-season Grand Slam, I think that Roger Federer beats Juan Martin Del Potro and claim his 19th overall major. Absolutely ridiculous numbers going into 2010. So at the 2010 Australian Open, it was Rafael Nadal forfeiting to Andy Murray in the quarterfinals. This will be Rafael Nadal's only loss when it comes to Grand Slams in the 2010 season. Nevertheless, the same Andy Murray made the finals. I don't think it matters if there is Nadal or no Nadal. He's still in the finals. He's still experienced or inexperienced equally. He's still tired or fresh equally. It doesn't really matter because he still loses to Roger Federer equally, and Roger Federer will win in this scenario his 20th major at the 2010 Australian Open. And by the way, Novak lost in the quarterfinals to Joe-Wilfried Tsonga. But at the French Open 2010 edition, Roger Federer finally loses a major match when it comes to this scenario. He loses to Robin Soderling 3-1. Novak loses to Jürgen Melzer also, by the score 3-2. And it's Jürgen Melzer and Robin Soderling in that final. Wow, what a weird final. And I think Robin Soderling actually wins his first major. Nevertheless, 2010 Wimbledon, it was Tomasz Berdych playing the spoiler. He defeated Roger Federer in the quarterfinals. He defeated Novak Djokovic in the semifinals, but then lost to Rafael Nadal in the finals. There is no Nadal. It means Soderling or Murray against Berdych. Really hard to guess who wins that final, but it doesn't really count. Everything stays the same when it comes to Novak and Roger. And US Open 2010, everybody knows what happened in the semis. Novak Djokovic saving 2 match points and defeating Roger Federer, but then losing to Rafael Nadal in the finals. If there is no Nadal, it's either Fernando Verdasco or Michal Yuzhny in that final. And yeah, Novak Djokovic is beating either of those two. Therefore, this is Novak's second US Open in this scenario and 4th ever major. Now, let's get on to 2011. At the 2011 Australian Open, it was David Ferrer defeating Rafael Nadal in the quarterfinals, and it was Novak Djokovic defeating Roger Federer in the semifinals, and of course, in the end, Novak defeated Andy Murray in the finals. Therefore, everything stays the same. There is a long shot that perhaps Marin Cilic could have reached the finals because he was on the Rafael Nadal side of the draw, but I think nothing really changes here. Now, let's go to the French Open. It was a epic match between Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic in the semifinals to snap Novak Djokovic's 40-plus game winning streak. So I think that still happens, and I think Roger is still in the final, and this time he does not lose to Rafael Nadal. He beats Andy Murray or Robin Soderling to claim in this scenario yet another French Open and his 21st major. Now, Wimbledon 2021, it was Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal in the finals, and it was Roger Federer actually losing to Joe-Wilfried Tsonga in the quarterfinals. So Novak is still in the finals, and he plays Andy Murray yet again. And this is a little bit closer, a little bit tougher, but the way that Novak was performing that year, I still have him beating Andy Murray and winning his first ever Wimbledon championship. Now, 2011 US Open, guess what? If there is no Rafael Nadal, it's again Andy Murray in the final. So there is a possibility that Andy Murray would play and lose four Grand Slam finals in the 2011 tennis season. What a season for Andy Murray. What a signature season that would be. Nevertheless, Novak beat Roger Federer in the semis, saving match points, nothing new. Very routine stuff from Novak Djokovic. And then, of course, as I mentioned, no Nadal in the finals. There's Andy Murray, and I still have Novak Djokovic defeating Andy Murray. Therefore, there we have the score of 21-7 going into 2012. So, of course, everybody remembers the epic 2012 Australian Open final. Djokovic Nadal 5 hours 53 minutes. Now, Nadal beat Federer in the semifinals. If there is no Nadal, there is Tomáš Berdych versus Roger Federer. And listen, Tomáš Berdych was a tough night out for anybody, especially for Roger Federer, who has multiple losses in Grand Slams versus Tomáš Berdych. He actually lost this year, 2012 US Open quarterfinals versus him, but I think he beats him in this tournament. But of course, Novak, the king of Australia, beats Roger Federer in the finals. Clean in the middle of the ring. 3-0, 3-1. It doesn't really matter. This is Novak's 8th major. And of course, at the Roland Garros, it was Novak Djokovic getting his revenge on Roger Federer for the previous year loss and losing to Rafael Nadal in the finals. If there is no Nadal, it's David Ferrer or Nicolas Almagro. Yes, Novak is winning that final easily, and Novak actually is holding all 4 majors in 2012. Amazing. Now let's go to the Wimbledon. It was Federer this time coming out on top versus Novak in the semifinals and then beating Andy Murray in the finals. And Rafael Nadal does not have any effect because he lost in the second round to Lucas Russell. Therefore, everything stays the same. 22nd major for Roger Federer. And then, as I previously mentioned, Federer lost to Tomáš Berdych in the quarterfinals of the 2012 US Open, and Novak lost to Andy Murray in the finals. Everything stays absolutely the same, and it cannot possibly change because Rafael Nadal wasn't even playing at the 2012 US Open, and he wasn't even playing at the 2013 Australian Open either. It was Federer losing to Murray in the quarterfinals 3-2, and it was Novak defeating Murray in the finals 3-1. Therefore, everything stays the same, and Novak is in double digits already. Now, let's go to the 2013 French Open. Rafael Nadal returns with a bang. He won this tournament, but this was the match in which he was challenged the most versus Novak Djokovic, with the exception of the 2015 quarterfinal. So first of all, let's just mention that Federer lost in the quarterfinals to Jo-Wilfried Tsonga, but nevertheless, the semifinal Novak-Rafa 9-7 fifth set was a epic one. If there is no Rafa, there is a possibility of Stan Wawrinka versus Novak Djokovic, Roland Garros 2013. Now, this was tough to pick, but I went with Novak simply because Wawrinka just didn't break the ice yet. He lost the 2013 Australian Open. He lost the 2013 US Open versus Novak. He beat him at the 2014 Australian Open. So I went with Novak. Like, it's really close. It was 55-45 Novak. It could have gone either way, but nevertheless, I think the way Nadal beat Wawrinka and then the way that Nadal was really challenged versus Novak, that's the reason why I went with Novak. But nevertheless, it's Novak in the finals against David Ferrer. Easy day of work. Major number 11 for Novak. Now, let's go to the Wimbledon. It was Andy Murray defeating Novak Djokovic in the finals. And of course, Federer, Nadal, both of them didn't really perform well. It was Steve Darcis defeating Rafael Nadal in the first round and Sergei Stakhovsky defeating Roger Federer in the second round 3-1. So everything stays the same. And then US Open 2013, everybody remembers this. It was Rafael Nadal winning his second ever US Open, defeating Novak Djokovic in a really good final. Now, let's just mention that Roger lost in the fourth round to Tommy Robredo. If there is no Nadal, it's Richard Gasquet, Tommy Robredo, Philip Kohlschreiber against Novak. It's not like I love giving these slams without Rafa to Novak, but come on, who are these guys? Novak Djokovic would beat either of those guys, so it's 2012-12, 22-12 going into 2014. It was Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer again in the semifinals of the 2014 Australian Open, and it was Rafael Nadal winning again in Australia. And then, of course, he lost in a unfortunate fashion to Stan Wawrinka, injury-plagued final. Now, nevertheless, it would mean that it's Grigor Dimitrov or Kei Nishikori against Roger Federer in that semifinal. Tough match for Roger, but I still have him winning, and then, of course, him facing Stan Wawrinka, and I just think that it's usually Roger Federer coming out on top versus Stan Wawrinka when it really matters. Therefore, I have Roger actually winning his major number 23, and Novak, of course, lost to Stan Wawrinka in the quarterfinals 3-2. Now, let's go to France. Rafael Nadal made his return, and of course, he defeated Novak Djokovic in the finals, and it was Roger Federer losing in the fourth round to the eventual semifinalist Ernest Gulbis. Now, who would face Novak if there is no Rafa? Well, it's either David Ferrer or Andy Murray. David Ferrer, I think Novak beats him. Andy Murray may be a tougher matchup, but we already saw that match on clay a couple of times, and it was always Novak. So therefore, I have Novak Djokovic winning his 13th major and third straight French Open. Now you may say, well, I didn't give Federer straight or back-to-back French Opens. Well, I think Novak Djokovic had A, easier opponents, B, he was always a better player on clay than Roger Federer. Now, nevertheless, let's go to the Wimbledon. It was Nadal losing to Nick Kyrgios in the fourth round, so therefore it doesn't really matter. It was Federer and Djokovic in the finals, and everything stays absolutely the same. Novak is still winning, 23-14, cutting down the lead into single digits. And at the US Open, it was Federer losing in the semifinals, and of course Novak Djokovic also lost in the semifinals. Quite uneventful tournament, and Rafael Nadal wasn't even playing. Now let's go to Australia 2015. Nadal lost to Berdych in the quarterfinals 3-0. It was Federer losing to Andreas Seppi in the third round, and of course Novak Djokovic defeating Andy Murray yet again in the finals to win his, in this scenario, 15th major. Now, it was Federer this time losing a big match to Stan Wawrinka at the French Open quarterfinals, and the same Stan Wawrinka defeated Novak Djokovic in the finals, the same Novak who defeated Rafael Nadal in the quarterfinals. Now, if there would be no Nadal, would you think that Novak is not focused on the quarter? Because definitely he was focused on that quarterfinal matchup to get over the hump. But yeah, I think he was perfectly aware that Stan Wawrinka is a super dangerous player. They played multiple five-setters, so therefore I don't think that anything changes with or without Rafa. So yeah, still an F for Novak. And then let's go to the Wimbledon. Again, Nadal isn't or wasn't a factor. He lost to Dustin Brown in the second round 3-1, and it was again Federer and Djokovic in the finals, and it was again Novak winning the tournament 23-16. Novak Djokovic is really cutting into this lead. And then again, Rafael Nadal, a non-factor. He was a complete non-factor in 2015. He lost to Fabio Fognini 3-2 in the third round. And of course, another Novak Djokovic Roger Federer final and another Novak Djokovic victory. So it is actually 23-17 going into 2016. The lead is down to only 6 Grand Slams. At the 2016 Australian Open, it was Fernando Verdasco defeating Rafael Nadal in the first round 3-2, and I guess getting his revenge for the 2009 semi-final loss. Therefore, everything stays the same. It was Federer and Djokovic in the semis, Novak winning 3-1, and then of course beating Andy Murray in the finals. Nothing new, everything stays the same. SF, dub, 23-18. Now, as you can see, Roger didn't participate at the 2016 French Open, and it was, of course, Rafael Nadal withdrawing from that tournament after the third round. Therefore, everything stays the same. It's still Novak and Murray in the finals, and it's still Novak Djokovic winning, this time his 19th Grand Slam, and he is holding all 4 majors for the second time in his career simultaneously. Now, let's continue. 2016 Wimbledon. Of course, everybody remembers Novak losing to Sam Querrey in the third round, but Roger lost to Milos Raonic in the semis 3-2. The same Milos Raonic who lost to Andy Murray in the finals. So again, everything stays pretty much the same because Rafael Nadal wasn't even playing on this tournament. By the way, this was slam number 19 for Novak, the previous one, of course. So yeah, everything stays the same. And of course, as you can see, Roger didn't play at the 2016 US Open. Rafael Nadal lost to Luka Pul in the fourth round. Therefore, he isn't a factor again. Really weird tournament for Novak. The sweaty semifinal against Gael Monfils and then him losing to Stan Wawrinka in the finals. So yeah, everything is kind of same. In 2016, Rafael Nadal also didn't have a impactful season, but let's talk about 2017, the Renaissance. It was Roger Federer defeating Rafael Nadal in the final of the 2017 Australian Open, and it was actually Novak losing in the second round to Denis Istomin in 5 sets. So yeah, nothing really changes here. Roger Federer is still winning his tournament, except he's facing Milos Raonic or Grigor Dimitrov in the final. You can say perhaps those are tough opponents, but I still feel that Roger would win that tournament. So yeah, this is major number 24 for Roger Federer. He, of course, didn't play the French Open, and of course, Novak Djokovic lost in the quarterfinals to Dominic Thiem. So it would be actually Dominic Thiem and Stan Wawrinka in that final, perhaps. That would be an epic match to watch. But nevertheless, it doesn't really matter in this scenario. Let's continue. Wimbledon 2017. It was Rafael Nadal losing to Gilles Miller in the fourth round. By the way, I apologize because when I was talking about 2005, I mentioned that Rafael Nadal lost to Gilles Miller 10 years later, which would be 2015. No, he lost to Gilles Miller again in 2017. Therefore, it is a 12-year gap, but it doesn't really matter because it was Roger Federer winning the tournament. And yeah, it's still Federer and Cilic because Novak withdrew to forfeited to Tomasz Berdych and the quarterfinals. So it is major number 25. And then let's go to the US Open. It was Roger Federer losing to Juan Martin Del Potro in the quarterfinals, and Novak wasn't even playing. Therefore, everything stays the same. It's funny to mention that probably Juan Martin Del Potro would win that tournament without Rafael Nadal because he would play Andrei Rublev in the semifinals and, of course, Kevin Anderson in the finals. Therefore, Delpo, I think in this scenario, is already a multiple-time Grand Slam champion. Nevertheless, let's continue into 2018. The 2018 Australian Open, it was Roger Federer, of course, reaching a real-life career milestone, 20th major, defeating Marin Cilic in the finals 3-2. The same Marin Cilic who defeated Rafael Nadal in the quarterfinals. It was actually Rafael Nadal forfeiting in early fifth set. Now, if somebody else faces Marin Cilic in that quarterfinal, does that mean that he's fresher against Roger in the final? Well, I think Diego Schwartzman is, of course, a easier match for him, but he still plays Kyle Edmund in the semifinals. That's still an easy match for him and is still equally fresh or not fresh against Roger Federer. Therefore, I have the same outcome. And of course, let's just mention that Novak lost to Chong Hyung in the fourth round. So this is major 26 for Roger in this scenario. Now, of course, French Open, it was Novak losing in the quarterfinals and Roger not even playing. So everything stays the same. And I think it would be actually Del Potro and Thiem playing in that final. Really, really interesting, of course, without Rafael Nadal. Now, let's go to the Wimbledon. It was Kevin Anderson defeating Roger Federer in the quarterfinals. And, of course, there was a Novak-Rafa match, Novak-Rafa affair in the semis. Now, this was really hard for me because instead of Rafa, it would be Juan Martin Del Potro. That might even be a tougher match for Novak. And the Rafa match was, of course, super, super tight. But I still have Novak because he's 16-4 against Del Potro overall. So I think it's also a 5-setter. Also really, really, really close. Epic 5-setter. But I just cannot take it away from Novak Djokovic. Therefore, he wins his 20th major at the 2018 Wimbledon. Now, let's go to America. It was, of course, Roger Federer losing in the fourth round. And then Novak Djokovic winning the tournament. I think that Novak would still win this tournament. It would possibly be Team or Del Potro in the final, and of course, it doesn't really matter. Novak was really playing great in the tournament, and by the way, Federer lost to John Millman in the fourth round, if I didn't mention that so far. So this is major number 21. Now let's go to Australia 2019. Roger lost to Stefanos Tsitsipas in the fourth round, therefore that stays the same. And of course, it was Nadal and Djokovic in the finals. It would have been Tsitsipas or Tiafoe instead of Nadal. Easy day in the office for Novak Djokovic, major number 22. Now let's go to the French Open 2019. Wow, this was the toughest one for me because this could have gone three completely different way. So in the previous video, without Roger Federer, I had actually Novak Djokovic defeating Dominic Thiem in that semifinal because the weather conditions would be slotted differently. So Novak could perhaps win because it was really, to me, a 50-50 match. So in the scenario, without Rafa, of course, Roger plays probably Kei Nishikori. So again, the time slots are different for Novak and Thiem. And I could have picked Novak to beat Thiem and then, of course, beat Federer in the final. I could have picked Novak to beat Thiem and then beat Nishikori in the finals because it's not like Roger was a super dominating player on the 2019 French Open. But I feel that I've taken away some Grand Slams from Roger Federer in this video, some potential Grand Slams in this video. So I went with Thiem. And again, now I have multiple choices. Is Thiem fresh enough to beat Roger Federer? But I think the weather was so shitty on that early June afternoon, Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, that Thiem is completely wasted after the second set. Because remember, there were two competitive sets against Rafael Nadal, and then he was done. So I have Novak losing to Thiem, still losing to Thiem, and I have Roger Federer actually defeating Dominic Thiem in that final. It's not like Dominic Thiem was a worse player than Roger Federer. He was just simply super tired. Now, again, you can say, well, if Thiem is already a Grand Slam champion, does Novak beat him? Is he a little bit more experienced? Does he beat Roger? It's just a million scenarios with this. So I went with Roger. I don't know why. I just felt generous. Of course, a lot of you will completely disagree with me. That's fine. I disagree with myself at this point, but it doesn't really matter. And yeah, let's just continue. 2019 Wimbledon. Now I cannot give this to Roger. Of course, he would have an easier opponent. He would have Sam Querrey if that's an easier opponent. Maybe Sam Querrey actually beats him. So you can make an argument that Roger would be fresher in the final, but nevertheless, if I gave him the 2019 French Open out of nothing, I definitely think that he loses the final to Novak, and it's Novak winning major number 23. And of course, at the US Open, it didn't really matter what Nadal did because it was, of course, Novak losing to Stan Wawrinka in the fourth round, forfeiting, and then it was Roger losing to Grigor Dimitrov in the quarterfinals, 3-2. And of course, it would be Schwartzman or Berrettini versus Medvedev in that final instead of Nadal. Really an interesting matchup, and I think Daniil Medvedev would win the 2019 US Open. So the 2020 Australian Open marked the last time we saw Roger Federer at a Grand Slam until the point of recording this video, and he lost to Novak in the semis 3-0. I think that stays absolutely the same with or without Rafael Nadal, and you can perhaps argue with Dominic Thiem be a little bit fresher against Novak in that final if he would play somebody else instead of Rafael Nadal in that quarterfinal, but I think he would play Nick Kyrgios, and as you saw in 2021, Nick isn't a easy out for Dominic Thiem. So yeah, I think that stays absolutely the same. And I know that Thiem was playing better in 2020, but yeah, I still think that it's Novak winning his 24th major in this scenario. Now let's just ignore the fact that the US Open was held before the French Open in 2020. Of course, Roger, the defending champion in this scenario, wasn't even playing, and it was Rafa and Novak in the final. Instead of Rafa, well, it would be Jannik Sinner or Diego Schwartzman. And yes, Diego Schwartzman was playing really, really well, but I think that would be a 4 or 5 setter between those two in the semis. And yeah, Novak is definitely a favorite in that final, and I definitely think he would win his, in this scenario, sixth French Open. Crazy, crazy, crazy scenarios. And of course, yeah, if you want to get real philosophical, without Rafael Nadal, that disqualification of the US Open doesn't happen, because Carreño Busta wouldn't become a tennis player without the inspiration of Rafael Nadal, and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I think we should stick with the disqualification in the fourth round. Of course, that was the 25th overall major for Novak. And yeah, when it comes to the 2021 season, everything stays pretty much the same. You can perhaps say that it would be Fognini against Tsitsipas in the quarterfinals instead of Nadal. And then, does that affect Daniil Medvedev? No, I think it's still Daniil Medvedev and Novak Djokovic in the finals. So it is major number 26 for Novak, and we are done. It's 27 to 26 finished. And let me just add a quick recap. So Roger Federer would have 8 Australian Opens, 5 Roland Garroses, 9 Wimbledons, and 5 US Opens. Novak would have still 9 Australian Opens, but 6 French Opens, 5 Wimbledons, and 6 US Opens. So in my opinion, this was the weirdest, most controversial, most unpredictable scenario, because it could have gone 570 different ways when it comes to only the 2019 French Open. I just don't know who would win all of those French Opens. You know, the 2007 US Open could have gone differently. 2008 French Open could have gone differently. Bunch of different ways. There are some scenarios in which Roger has 29 slams, Novak has 24. You can maybe make a scenario in which Novak has more slams than Roger. So I thought that this is kind of balanced out. In the beginning, I was favoring maybe Novak a little bit more, but then towards the end, I tried to cover it up, try to give it to Roger a little bit more. So it's just really hard. And one more thing, when you look at Roger, of course, you have the gap: 2010 Australian Open, 2017 Australian Open, only one major. It looks a little bit better with the 2011 French Open and the 2014 Australian Open. He looks a little bit more consistent. And of course, you can see that Roger won all 4 majors in 2009. So yeah, it was a fun video to make, but to me, I don't even like it. It's so weird. I just cannot get a correct prediction. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely unpredictable. How would the world look like without Rafael Nadal? So let me know in the comment section, what do you think? How would the Grand Slam race between Roger and Novak look without Rafael Nadal? And cut.